Hey everyone, it's Jimmy here asking you to quickly hit like and subscribe and the notification bell before we start. Also, don't forget to leave a comment saying where you're listening from or just drop the I'm doing my part meme. Life is too short to be ordinary. These were the final words Yingying Zhang wrote in her diary, a simple, optimistic sentence that would soon become a haunting epitaph. In the spring of 2017, the 26-year-old visiting scholar was the embodiment of extraordinary promise. Having arrived at the University of Illinois Urbana-Champaign just weeks earlier, she was pursuing her dream of becoming a professor. She was conducting postgraduate research in agricultural sciences that she hoped would one day allow her to return to China and support her working-class parents. June 9, 2017, was a clear summer afternoon in Urbana, Illinois. For Yingying, it was a day of simple errands. She was on her way to sign a lease for a new apartment, a step toward settling into her new life abroad. Running late, she sent a text message to the apartment manager at 1:39, letting them know she would arrive around 2:10. After getting off one bus at 1:52 p.m., she hurried to a corner to catch her transfer. She tried to flag it down, but she was on the wrong side of the street, and the bus drove past without stopping. It was a minor, frustrating moment of the sort that happens every day. Unfortunately for this bright young woman, this seemingly insignificant event would start the chain of events that would directly end her life. Undeterred, Yingying walked a few blocks to another bus stop on North Goodwin Avenue, a public, well-trafficked area on campus. The location itself seemed to offer a layer of security. After all, this wasn't a dark alley or a deserted road, but the heart of a bustling university in the middle of the afternoon. At 2 p.m., a surveillance camera recorded a black Saturn Astra driving past her. The car circled the block and 3 minutes later pulled up beside her. Yingying spoke to the driver for about a minute. Then, at 2:04 p.m., she stepped off the curb and got into the passenger seat. The car pulled away, and Yingying Zhang was never seen again. When the apartment manager texted her at 2:38 p.m., there was no reply. As hours turned into evening, her friends and colleagues grew frantic. Calls to her phone went unanswered. At 9:24 p.m., an associate professor officially reported her missing to the University of Illinois Police. The initial days of the investigation were a flurry of activity. The University of Illinois Police and the FBI launched a joint task force, while the campus's student population mobilized, coordinating search parties and distributing flyers. The university and Crime Stoppers offered a reward that quickly grew to $50,000 for any information leading to her whereabouts. Yingying's family flew in from China, vowing not to leave the United States without their daughter. The investigation's first major clue came from the surveillance footage that captured her last moments. The video was grainy, and the car's license plate was unreadable, a frustrating dead end. However, investigators were able to identify the vehicle as a black Saturn Astra. They compiled a list of all 18 registered owners of that specific model in Champaign County. One of them was Brent Christensen, a 27-year-old former physics PhD student at the same university. When first questioned on June 12th, Christensen told investigators he couldn't remember his whereabouts on the day of the disappearance, suggesting he was playing video games, but investigators were persistent. On June 14th, they re-examined the surveillance footage with fresh eyes. This time, they noticed a small, seemingly insignificant detail. The car in the video had a cracked front passenger side hubcap. When they went back to inspect Christensen's vehicle, they found the exact same flaw. It was the critical link they needed, a piece of classic observational police work that unlocked the digital evidence. Armed with this new information, the FBI brought Christensen in for questioning again on June 15th. This time his story changed. He admitted to picking up an Asian woman who seemed distressed, but he claimed she panicked when he made a wrong turn, so he let her out of his car just a few blocks later. It was a lie, and investigators knew it. During a search of his car, they noted that the passenger door appeared to have been cleaned far more meticulously than the rest of the vehicle. This was a clear and obvious sign of a potential effort to destroy evidence. As they dug deeper, a chilling portrait of the predator, who had been hiding in plain sight, began to emerge. Christensen's life was unraveling. He was dealing with a failed marriage, drinking way too much, and had dropped out of his doctoral program. But beneath this surface-level turmoil was a dark, escalating fantasy life he had meticulously documented online. His internet history revealed a disturbing obsession with Ted Bundy, and he openly fantasized about achieving similar infamy. He was an active user on a fetish website, where he frequented forums like Abduction 101 and read guides on planning a perfect abduction fantasy. His search history included topics like decomposition, and he had downloaded images of mostly Asian women bound and gagged. With Christensen identified as the prime suspect, the FBI placed him under 24-hour surveillance. They knew he was their man, but without a body or a confession, their case was circumstantial. Their breakthrough came from an unlikely source: Christensen's own girlfriend, Tara Bullis. Approached by agents, she agreed to cooperate, hoping that if she could get him to talk, she might prove his innocence. She began wearing a wire, secretly recording their conversations for the FBI. The investigation reached its horrifying climax on June 29, 2017. A memorial walk and concert was being held on campus to honor Yingying, who was still officially considered a missing person. In an act of staggering audacity, Brent Christensen decided to attend, bringing Tara with him. If Christensen was the criminal mastermind he believed himself to be, he may have played his cards differently here. Thankfully for the cause of justice, and for Yingying and her family, he wasn't quite so brilliant. Surrounded by hundreds of people mourning his victim, Christensen, who knew he was being watched by the FBI, couldn't contain his narcissistic pride. His ego, his need to be recognized for what he had done, overrode any instinct for self-preservation. On the walk, with the FBI's recording device capturing every word, he began to confess. He bragged that Yingying was his 13th victim, a claim investigators have never been able to substantiate, and that he was a successful serial predator. He described how he had posed as an undercover officer to lure Yingying into his car, a tactic he had tried on another young woman earlier that same day. He then recounted, in chillingly casual detail, how he took her back to his apartment, where he played out his sick fantasies before decapitating her. He marveled at how she fought for her life, calling her supernatural in her resilience. He boasted that her family, who had traveled across the world to find her, wouldn't even get her remains. The next day, on June 30th, Brent Christensen was clapped in cuffs. The federal trial of Brent Christensen began in June 2019. The prosecution's case was overwhelming. They presented the surveillance video and the forensic evidence from Christensen's apartment. Bloodstains on his mattress and carpet were a DNA match to Yingying. The centerpiece, however, was the set of horrifying secret recordings. The jury listened as Christensen's own voice filled the courtroom, describing the gruesome slaying of the young woman whose family sat just feet away. Faced with this mountain of irrefutable evidence, the defense made a stunning and calculated decision. In his opening statement, the defense attorney stood before the jury and admitted what Christensen had done. It wasn't a surrender, but a strategic pivot. Knowing an acquittal was impossible, the defense conceded guilt on the very first day to shift the trial's focus. Their entire case was an argument against the death penalty, portraying him as a man who had lost a battle with his own demons. In this way, The defense intended to turn the state's evidence of Christensen's online activity into a means to spare him from being condemned. They claimed that he was a man consumed by substance abuse and mental illness, whose life had spiraled out of control. After deliberating for over 8 hours, the jury returned on July 18, 2019. He was guilty as charged, but that was a given. They announced they were deadlocked, unable to reach the unanimous decision required by federal law to impose the death penalty. As a result, Brent Christensen was automatically sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. Upon hearing that his life would be spared, Christensen smiled at his mother. Yingying's family sat stoically, their quest for what they considered full justice unfulfilled. For the Zhang family, the life sentence was a devastating blow, but it was compounded by a far deeper and more enduring agony. The body of their daughter has never been found. They have been denied the fundamental closure of bringing her home for a proper burial, a ritual of profound importance in Chinese culture. Christensen's boast that she would never be found was a final act of control, a way to ensure the family's torment would be perpetual. After the trial, information provided by Christensen's lawyers under an immunity agreement finally revealed what he had done with her remains. He had dismembered her body, placed the parts in 3 separate garbage bags, and tossed them into a dumpster outside his apartment. 3 days later, the dumpster's contents were collected, taken to a private landfill, compacted at least twice, and buried under what is now more than 30 feet of trash. Officials have stated that after years of decomposition and compression, her remains could be smaller than a cell phone, making any search effort almost certain to fail. They've also cited the extreme costs associated with the search, given that the case has, in essence, been fully solved. While it's ultimately unclear if he was telling the truth about this, regardless, the search for her body effectively ended. Hey everyone, it's Jimmy here, reminding you to subscribe and hit the notification bell and turn on all those notifications. Also, if you're feeling generous and have the means to do so, check out the membership option by clicking join or hit the Patreon link in the description. It was a quiet October morning in 2022 when a chilling discovery shattered the peace of the city of Forest in Virginia. Inside a modest apartment on Madison View Drive, 28-year-old Katlyn Lyon Montgomery, a devoted mother of a young daughter, was found unresponsive by her roommate. What initially seemed like a medical emergency quickly revealed itself as something sinister. Paramedics noticed telltale signs of foul play, tiny hemorrhages in Katlyn's eyes, and linear marks on her neck consistent with strangulation. On her bed, wrapped in a blanket, investigators found a phone charging cord, a mundane item turned into a weapon. The tranquil town had become the scene of a brutal crime, and attention turned to finding who had done this to her. Detectives soon learned that Katlyn had recently ended a tumultuous relationship. Just 1 week before her death, she broke up with her boyfriend, 28-year-old Trenton Fry, but the breakup was far from amicable. In the days leading up to the killing, Fry had allegedly stalked Katlyn. Prosecutors revealed he even searched online for the floor plan of her apartment. On the evening of October 6, 2022, Katlyn and Fry exchanged heated text messages, hinting at an argument in progress. Katlyn was at home in Forest, likely unaware that Fry was lurking nearby despite his claims of being out of town. Around 10 p.m., Katlyn's roommate discovered her unconscious on the bedroom floor, and frantic calls for help ensued. Around that same time, a critical digital clue emerged. Data from Fry's cell phone placed him roughly a mile from Katlyn's home at 10:19 p.m. Just minutes later, he set his phone to navigate to North Carolina. Prosecutors later argued this was the moment Fry slipped away after strangling Katlyn with a charger cord. Katlyn was rushed to Lynchburg General Hospital, but she died from her injuries on October 8th. With clear evidence of strangulation, investigators immediately viewed Fry as the prime suspect given the recent breakup and the reports of a late-night dispute. When Bedford County deputies contacted Fry by phone on October 7th, while Katlyn was still in critical condition, he claimed he knew nothing about what happened. Fry insisted he'd been working in North Carolina on the night of the 6th and didn't even know where Katlyn was living. Of course, that story unraveled almost as soon as the evidence came in. Phone records and search warrants quickly undercut Fry's alibi. Instead of being hours away, Fry's phone was placed in the vicinity of Katlyn's apartment during the critical window of the crime. His device didn't ping any North Carolina cell towers until about 9:30 the next morning, October 7th. In addition, Fry's employer confirmed he was not working on the night of October 6th or the following day, directly contradicting his statements to police. Sometimes it's a blessing that many criminals are just so dumb. I have to question whether he believed the cops would never check his alibi. Authorities also noted Fry's suspicious behavior after the event. One day after Katlyn died, he checked himself into a mental health unit in Greensboro, North Carolina. Detectives saw this as a possible attempt to create some sort of insanity defense. On October 20th, 2022, about 2 weeks after the killing, police arrested Fry in Greensboro. He was initially charged with second-degree charges and was soon extradited back to Virginia to face trial. Fry's trial began in late March 2025 in Bedford County. Prosecutors laid out a narrative of a calculated, premeditated attack, arguing that Fry was an ex-boyfriend who couldn't accept rejection. The evidence showed he had stalked Katlyn in the days before her death, even looking up her apartment layout, and then tried to cover his tracks with lies. Jurors heard how Fry's phone movements, the timing of his flight from Virginia, and his own shifting stories all aligned with a cold-blooded plot to kill. In response, Trenton Fry took the rare opportunity to take the stand and offered a different account. Notably, the reason this generally isn't done is because this opens the defendant up to cross-examination. Cross-examination isn't a truth-finding expedition, but rather an opportunity for opposing counsel to win admissions that help their own case and destroy the credibility of the witness. In essence, even people who are 100% innocent can be made to look guilty by an experienced lawyer extracting the proper admissions. But let's get back to the testimony he gave on the stand. He admitted being near Katlyn's apartment that night, but claimed it was only because he had a bad feeling and wanted to check on her. According to Fry, he arrived to find first responders at the scene, and without alerting anyone to his presence, panicked and drove back to North Carolina. He admitted that he lied and made up a story about being at work because he believed that the authorities wouldn't believe he wasn't involved. Fry then claimed that he checked into the hospital due to his declining mental state over his fear that he would be arrested for something he didn't do. The defense, for their part, stressed that no DNA or fingerprints placed him inside the apartment, implying that someone else could have been responsible. Without direct forensic proof, they argued, the case was only circumstantial evidence. After several days of testimony, the jury needed only about an hour of deliberation to reach a decision. In April 2025, they found Trenton Fry guilty in the first degree, holding him responsible for Katlyn's slaying. The mountain of digital evidence, combined with his pattern of stalking and the web of lies he told investigators, left little room for doubt about his guilt. The defense's insistence that there was no proof Fry entered the apartment couldn't overcome the compelling circumstantial case that pointed squarely to him. Notably, The defense couldn't turn to an alternative set of unknown fingerprints in the apartment to place blame on a potential third party. As the verdict was announced, an emotional wave swept through the courtroom. Katlyn's family, who had endured over 2 years of grief and uncertainty, wept and embraced one another in relief. Though nothing could bring her back, they said that seeing Fry held accountable brought a measure of peace. In August 2025, Fry returned to court for sentencing. Though guidelines suggested a decades-long prison term, the judge deemed the crime so heinous that he opted to send Fry to prison for life. The judge called the slaying cold-blooded and calculated, among the worst he had ever seen. This ensured that the now 31-year-old defendant will spend the rest of his life behind bars with no chance of release. Before the sentence was finalized, Katlyn's mother and brother described how Fry's actions had devastated their family. Fry offered a brief quote-unquote apology, saying he was truly sorry for their loss. He also claimed that he was sorry for the loss of his former girlfriend as well, effectively maintaining his innocence despite the finding of the jury.